welcome everyone back to the arena with your host, Matt, your co-host, MD. First and foremost, thank you all for being here, for supporting. Again, please follow, like, subscribe, share, all the things. We appreciate it. It takes, hopefully a few seconds and makes an outsized impact on our ability to touch more people and impact more lives. So we're going to continue what we've been doing, if you've listened to any of the recent episodes, which is where we ask each other a couple questions that are meant to be reflective, introspective, vulnerable in nature, and MD doesn't know the questions I'm going to ask him, and I don't know the questions that he's going to ask me. So it's led to some good dialogue. We've gotten some good feedback, and we've enjoyed it, most importantly. So hopefully you all have as well. So to start, I have asked MD the last two episodes his first question. So we're going to flip it and put the pressure on me and have him ask the first question to me.
Yeah, thanks for at least offering to do that. What's up, everybody? So I'm just now thinking I sort of want to ask what I thought was my second question. I'm probably just going to ask it first. I think it's a better place to start. It's a big picture one. Yeah, rubbing your hands. And I think we've talked about in some ways like how you could like have an attachment to a certain image for what this ideal image for what life you want to live. I think not everybody, we always generalize like that, but there's the common image of like, the house and the family and the dog and the white picket fence, right? And so I was just curious with where you're at in your life, like when you close your eyes and imagine your life, or is there an image? And what is that image for you right now where it's like, if you were to take a step back and think about the ideal picture, or a picture at least, of like what you think or what you would like your life to look like X amount of years down the road? Is there an image first off, and then paint that picture for us?
Yeah, talk about a deep question. That's a good one. I think maybe the image that I would quote unquote like if I'm truly honest and what I think is true to my heart, they might be two different things. And I think the reason they're different is because there's still some just insecurity around parts of myself and things of that nature. Because in an ideal world, they would be the same. You'd have the life that is true to you, and it would feel right and it'd feel aligned, and you just go live that life and you just live your truth. But obviously it's not that simple. For most of us, we've got different ideals or beliefs about what our life should look like. So I think, for me, because I've done this exercise before where, I kind of meditate, get still, and you try to kind of envision the future, and again, without attachment to what you think your life should look like and who you should be around and what you're doing. And I think whenever I've done this exercise, there's always been another man next to me, when it comes to a partner. And that's been really uncomfortable because I'm like, well, it could be easier if it was like a woman. Can we just replace that with a woman? Like, that'd be easier. That would match what I believe to be true my entire life. So, but if I'm truly honest with myself, that's kind of what I see, what I envision. I envision myself somewhere warm. I don't know where that is, but whenever I've done this, I've seen myself on a beach, palm trees, somewhere warm with good weather, with the sun out. And I'm just surrounded by people I love. I think that's really important that's really all I need, is to be surrounded by people I love in a good environment and having genuine conversation. I don't see myself, whenever I've done this, there's been nothing entertainment wise. I'm not at a baseball game. I'm not at a concert. Doesn't mean I won't ever do those things. But when I think about what's truly important to me, it's being around people I love and truly connecting with them, whether that's through deep conversation, whether that's through some singing and dancing, whatever that might be. So a pretty simple life is what I need in terms of what I'm doing career-wise. I think that's TBD. I love to speak. I'd love to continue to speak, but I would try to remain unattached to how I can, serve an impact. But for now, this brings me a lot of joy. So that's kind of a jumbled answer. But I think if anyone has a true, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing, and here's exactly where I am, you still might be attaching yourself. There might be a part of yourself attaching to this quote unquote ideal, because I don't think it's supposed to be perfectly mapped out. What would you say?
Well, yeah, you didn't, you left a lot, I guess, you left a lot of space for things to just happen and fill in like the canvas, if you will. What I heard was a male companion and somewhere warm, and then yeah, I mean surrounded by people you love, and then career it's TBD. But like I was curious about like what does your everyday lifestyle look like? Like what does morning to night look like? Like what are you doing in this warm place every day? And is there any like materialism to this? Like what does the house look
Oh,
like? Is
yeah. I mean, I
I'm
think,
just curious like if you have those like sorts of images at all, which doesn't sound like it comes to mind
yeah. I
anyway.
mean, well, I mean, frank, like candidly, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be wealthy. Like, I think I've really had a lot of hesitation to even say that, but I think the more I feel pretty good about the work I'm doing in terms of its impact on the world, and the more I do that, the more I earn, and I feel good about that. I also think of myself as a pretty good steward of capital, and put it in the right places. So I want to have a nice home. Doesn't need to be like over the top, but I'd like to have a nice home, ideally like near the water. Um, I don't need a super nice car. Not super important to me. I'm a comfort person now. I need comfortable clothes. Don't need super materialistic designer clothes. And I think day to day, I'm just nurturing my body. I'm nurturing my mind. Exercising a lot of creativity, whether it's creating content, whether it's going out on the street and doing my little help me celebrate videos or some form of that. I'm constantly exercising a fair amount of creativity, and I'm moving my body. I'm making choices that feel good to me. Um, I'm doing more creating rather than consuming. I'll say that. So I don't know exactly what the day to day looks like. Obviously, when I'm speaking, I'm speaking. But on days I'm not, I think I'm being creative. Whether it could be a podcast, it could be, again, creating a reel. Like I think there's so many different ways to be creative. Maybe it's dancing a little bit. Um, but I'm really filling kind of my soul. Not necessarily, I just don't really care to go out to a bar. I don't really care to go to games very much or any of that type of entertainment. I'll do it once in a while with a friend or a family member, but for the most part, I'm just nurturing, my mind and my body.
It also sounds like you're almost like already there, or you can't. At least you can be. Just which is maybe a function of our age, but also like like I think if you ask like college me to paint the picture, regardless of what picture I would be painting, it would feel like far out. Um, but based on everything I've heard, you're a flight ticket away. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, do you realize that for yourself, or like do you feel like at least you're directionally aligning yourself to that? Is there any attachment to that, or I
I
guess how?
mean, yeah, it's a good question. I think, I mean, I'm proud of where I've come. I think I've come a long way. I try to recognize that. Like if I look at my life 4 years ago versus my life today, it's two completely different lifestyles and ways of living and daily activities. And yeah, I wake up every day excited for the most part, and with energy and with purpose and motivation and drive to and ambition to do stuff. So I try not to let that get lost on me. So, I would say I'm generally a very grateful, happy person. And I think there's always ways to continue to align your life with who you are. And I think that changes as you continue to discover who you are. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's a really good question. I think I am still trying to figure it out, but yeah, I think it's closer. What I'll say is what I think I've realized is like the at least the wiser I feel I've gotten, and the more authentic I've lived, the more I don't want to say healed, but the more in touch with myself that I've gotten. I just realized I don't need a lot of the things that I thought I needed. I don't need a huge lavish home. I'd like one. I'm gonna like if I so get there, like sure, I'm not. I wouldn't, but it's not. I know where its place is within my life and where it sits. It's not there to fill any sort of void that I feel, similar to like driving a super nice car. All those things. Again, are they nice? Sure. Am I completely opposed to them? Not necessarily, but I'll tell you one thing, I'm not going to invest in a nice car before I invest in my business and getting it to continue to where I want to go. Like I'm going to continue to invest in the things that fill me up, that serve, the different parts of my life. And if those things end up as byproducts in some form, like sure, but I'm not attached to them. And I don't think my life is like not as good as it could be because I don't have them. I don't think that's where any sort of fulfillment, any sort of energy, any sort of purpose comes from, at least in my life today.
Yeah, well said. And it sounds like the work to be done is to learn to actually love and accept your own image, the image that you've created. So I love and accept it for you. But yeah, I think that's something that you'll have to.
What about you?
My image?
Yeah. Or like your flip the question onto you.
Yeah. Like the question.
Actually, no. I'll give you one. I'll give you my
I
question.
mean, I can give you the short.
Yeah, give me because I feel like it'll be it could be it could be lead to a pretty drawn out answer. And then
similarly, I think there's a family I've built. There's love. There's happiness. And then, yeah, I would say like outdoorsy in nature, probably warm, but just outdoors in nature. Running a farm someday, perhaps. Like I think, that's for whatever reason.
I said that's where we differ.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe not running a farm, but I was just telling somebody the other day, I was like, I would love to be able to just like provide my own produce, like my own fruits and vegetables, and like have land and maybe chickens and like cook my own eggs um, and just, I mean, I'm sure you just heard the sirens. Like, I think I've gotten a taste of this very deep urban lifestyle, and I'm just, obviously very embedded in corporate America. And so from a grass is greener perspective, I think an image populates in my head in which it looks very inverse relationship to what is current. And so I don't know, maybe that's a deeper calling for me to do a radical shift in my life. But right now, I don't know that there's no pain with status quo, I wouldn't say. So it's trade-offs, I think.
Yeah, I think everything's trade-offs. I think, but it's important to recognize that you can find, whether you're on a farm or you're in River North, happiness comes from within. Now, there's obviously ways to, I think, your environment plays a role in allowing you to do the things that nurture and fulfill you, but wherever you go, there you are. So my question for you is, what's one trait or value that you aspire to have that you currently feel you lack or don't have enough of?
First thing I would say that comes to my mind. I don't, that I lack or feel like I don't have enough of trait-wise.
Or a value.
I'm gonna go with like playfulness. I lost that somewhere along the way, and I like think back to if I were to actually reconnect with that inner child, like, and I know that child very well, like the child version of me. I had a hard time sitting still, and now I don't want to lose my ability to be still, but like, he was a class clown. He was making people laugh. He was pulling pranks. He um, was loud. He took up a ton of space. Like uh, so I think there's parts of that where it's he was probably more imaginative, more creative. He used to play with action figures and uses white carpet staircase as a big snow mountain, and used to have like these big battles between action figures and I think somewhere along the way I adopted more of like a stoicism and a seriousness, and there are certainly, I think, elements of that I think are positive or at least serve me well, that I would want to preserve for, but I think there's still a shyness or an intimidation of just being silly, being playful. And if I think more about that, it's probably thinking like what's congruent to my current identity. And, it's somewhat of like a gym rat person that is a deep thinker that likes to have deep conversations and is more of like a people observer these days. And it's just, yeah. So I think there's this stage of my life in which I operate in that, um, I guess I've had to try to figure out how to reinvite or reconnect with a playful side of me that I know is there, I know exists. And I still try to make people laugh. The one thing that's probably been constant my whole life is a sense of humor and like how much I love laughing and how much I love making other people laugh. I think in another life, I'm a stand-up comedian, or there's just something about comedy and something about um, creating laughter that I love, that just lights me up. And I think somewhere along the way, I've lost that, or I've stopped exercising that in so many ways that, like, to an extent now where if I try I think it's uncomfortable. And so I see people who are just, there's a vibrancy or there's like a frequency, I think, that they like show up in the world as like they're silly, they're playful, they have like this energy about them. And I'm like, I see that and I'm like, I could use more of that. I could use more of that for sure.
What do you feel it would take to like reconnect with that part of you?
It goes back to our courage confidence conversation, like the courage to step into that, but then also what could help is an environment. Almost, what's funny is because I've talked about how this like this certain identity, um I think oftentimes when you're surrounded by people who perceive you within that identity, it it kind of compounds negatively because you almost stay trapped, or you almost keep yourself confined within this box, this identity, because of you're uncomfortable of showing the other people different sides of you or other parts of you in that way. It's almost like this unspoken peer pressure of like, you have to, that was actually one of the things that really ate at me the most when I had sort of like taken a huge setback in my fitness. Very similarly, was I was held to this like standard, and nobody like explicitly said this, right? But like you could tell that people viewed me as like somebody who was always in the gym working out. And then I started hearing like past tense, like, oh yeah, MD used to be, pretty jacked in college, or used to be this, used to be. I'm like, the hell you mean used to be, right? And I think those were like moments where I felt like I'd lost something. I'd like lost a part of me that I didn't really care to lose. Um, so to full circle back to your follow-up question, like either I just start doing it like the way that you did, and within the same environment, within the same, circle of people. I mean, obviously, within a distance, and you've reinvented your circle, but I think if you pin dropped me in a new environment, it would be a lot easier because it just allows me to like start anew. But I also think some of it is internal, where it's like I don't, sometimes when I feel that silliness or like that joyfulness, there's like a logical part of me that kicks in. It's just like, this is pointless. It's weird, but I think it would take a number of things to help me
It
step
feels
back
like
into
there's
that.
it almost, it feel like I heard like there's like a little bit of judgment, self-judgment.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like I've really tried to adopt, I've really tried to work on, for me, I've tried to work on being as intelligent as possible. I just like study for fun, which sounds ridiculous, but like, whether it's history, it's politics, it's philosophy, and you start getting really deep into these like different philosophical thought patterns that I would say, and some of the deepest thinkers will tell you, like some of the deepest philosophers, I think most of them have lost a great sense of joy. I don't know if you think about like some of the greatest thinkers in the world, like they're not joyful. I think there is some sort of, where the rational kicks in, the silliness kind of is absent in some ways.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that deep thinking, that deep rationalizing, intellectual is almost like like a coping mechanism or an avoidance mechanism for that other part of themselves that is one of play. And I see you nod your head.
Yeah. No, um, it probably would have taken me longer to get to that conclusion, but I would agree with that. Yeah, I would think that so many of our behaviors probably either pursuing some sort of reward, but also I think there's a lot of escapism or some sort of cope, right? I think cope has been a key word for me lately. It's like, oh, what am I doing out of coping? It's
I think,
so, yeah.
to your point on identity, like when I came out in that period of my life, everything I thought I knew about myself was just broken down. And so I think it gave me such a freedom, or I felt such a freedom to just like be me and just listen to my intuition, because I didn't have an identity anymore. The identity I had and been attached to my entire life was just shattered. And so I was like, I'm going to start we're going to start a podcast together. That's cool. I like talking about this stuff. I'm going to start going to comedy improv. Seems fun. I'm going to do it. It was probably the least I had ever cared about what other people thought about me. And I think it's because the identity I thought that I'd had for so long was just shattered. And so I just kind of like beat to my own drum. And then as I've continued down my journey and I think I've started to develop a different identity. And so I can feel myself kind of like, to your point, there's a little bit more reservation around maybe doing something new, or just a little bit more hesitation around following what I think I know to be true, because I'm like, well, this doesn't really match the identity or the version of myself that I've currently created or constructed. And so I think practically, the more that we can simply just become aware, quite frankly, of our identity, of the stories we tell ourselves, and start to audit them and like ask how much truth this has and how much weight we're putting into these different parts of ourselves, we can then continue to take steps forward. And obviously you can just, like you said, you can do the darn thing irrespective of what those closest to you might think, which are also going to be those that are most confused and questioning and maybe doubting, because they're used to a totally different version of you. It doesn't fit the mold or what they know about you. And or you can find a new environment where it's normal. Like me going and start dancing around all my friends that never dance might be viewed with a little judgment. People might not follow suit, but me dancing in a dance class and then meeting up with a couple people from that dance class, dancing's going to feel much more normalized. I'm not going to be met with the same judgment by myself and those around me. I mean, it's a big reason why I'm moving to Florida, notwithstanding the weather, but to me, I kind of view it as a fresh slate. Obviously, what I've learned is like wherever you go, there you are. Like your same problems are always going to, they're going to follow you. Those don't just go away. But what it does do is it creates, for me at least, kind of a fresh slate of I've got no attachment to anyone or anything here. I don't know how I would even describe like who I am as a person in this city. I'm just going to go sign up for things that seem true to me and that interest me and follow my curiosity and see where it leads me. So, to your point, I think it's a combination of those two things. If you can do both, if you can just do the darn thing and do it in a new environment, I think you're going to be on the right path. I'm not saying you, I'm just saying for anybody listening.
Yeah, and to like give a practical example, because it's like these small moments, I think sometimes that come up. I was at the Italian Fest the last weekend, whenever this was. Yeah, I think it was like this, must have been the weekend prior. Not important. It was over the weekend. It was on a Sunday. And it was like in the evening of the fast, and was walking with, we got some cigars, and I'm walking with a cigar with my buddy Steve, and I see this cop, and this cop is like posted up on like the corner of the street, and he's a pretty big dude, and he's got his sleeves out, he's got, tattoos, and he's also got a cigar, and he's like an older gentleman cop, but he's like fit and jacked. He just looked like a character from a movie, and he was just like puffing a cigar too while on the job. And I was just like, my instinct was, I kind of wanted to go take a picture with him, like a fun little picture, like us with cigars, and he's a cop on duty or whatever. And like that thought came up in my head, and I felt, pulled to do that. I didn't do it. I just like walked past, like, you know what? Nah, forget it. I'm not going to do that. Like, I spoke it out loud. I said it to Steve and his girlfriend, Sarah. I was like, oh, I should, I kind of wanted to go take a picture with him or whatever, but we kind of like kept walking, and like the further we kept walking, the further away, literally, we were pulling away from that, that fun moment that I could have created. And I actually started feeling regret instantaneously. Like I actually started feeling like as we kept walking, I was very close to like telling them like, hey, let's go back real quick. I want to get this picture. It'll be fun, and I could have easily have done that. There would have been no judgment. We could have done that. But, other thoughts just were like, forget it, just keep moving. And I look at that, and it's like such a small moment. It's not going to keep me up at night by any means, but I have stacked those moments over time, I think, and I think that's maybe what weighs on me. It's like, I should have done that. Why not? And what were the thoughts that, and I say this out loud for people to think about. It's like, what are the thoughts that creeped up that are like pulling you away from just creating some of those moments that probably otherwise would have added an extra degree of fun to that night?
Yeah, I mean, they're small, like you said, but they do add up. They compound, because I've had plenty of moments, still do, where I'm like, I really want to go up to that person, or, and I just don't for whatever reason. I mean, and on the flip side, when I have, sometimes it's led to, I went up to someone at Beatrix a few months ago, a couple I heard talking about entrepreneurship and in line, and then they went and sat down somewhere else. I'm like, dang, I wish they would have sat by me. It would have given me an easy in, but they didn't. And so I'm like, I know I'm going to regret if I don't go up to them, because they're younger, they're entrepreneurs. I don't know what they do, but I'm interested. I'm curious. And so I just went, I sat next to them, and then a minute later, hey, heard you guys talking about entrepreneurship. What do you do? And I'm still in touch with them, months later. And it's like, that would have never happened if I just, whatever, it's fine, no big deal. And like, yeah, it is no big deal, but also you don't know what's on the other side of actually taking action and having the conversation, or introducing yourself, or starting the business, or taking the first, whatever it is, you just don't know. And I'd rather fall under the side of doing it and nothing coming of it, rather than not doing it and brushing it off as like no big deal. But to your point, I do think every time you do that, we then rationalize about why it's no problem, but we continue to do it, and I think it eats at us over time, and we become that type of person that just isn't gonna do that.
Yeah, creating the moment or not creating that moment, that in of itself is not a big deal. Whether I take that picture or not doesn't, is not a big deal. I think what is a big deal is like what you were alluding to just now, is that over time, if you stack moments where you've repressed yourself or suppressed yourself from just instinct, from like doing something that is playful, because what the thoughts that came up in my head were quite irrational, but were almost of like consequence. Like, what are the consequences? Like, maybe he's not about it at all, and like he doesn't match the energy, and it's just an awkward scenario. Like, and then there's humiliation, right? The ego kicks in and starts speaking out these irrationalities that like oftentimes aren't even probably what's going to happen, right? And even if it does, who cares? It's just, yeah. So I think what ends up being a big deal is the fact that the fact that I took a posture out of fear versus, out of just playfulness and fun.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a little moment where fear wins the war or wins the battle, if you will, and our brains are malleable, so it's the more that happens, the more that happens, and vice versa. The more you build that little muscle of micro courage, the more you get comfortable doing it, and you realize that nothing, my life's not going to end
Yeah.
or whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
And if somebody were to ask me like, were you afraid to do it? I'd be like, no, I'm not objectively afraid of going up to somebody and doing that. But at the same time, there was fear, or there was just some sort of, forget about, just whatever. All right. Question for you.
Hit me.
And it's kind of along these lines of judgment. So it's a pretty good segue. One of the things that I've always that I keep coming back to from that small like 6-week positive intelligence course we took is how the things that we judge the hardest of others is a projection of what we judge of ourselves the most. So like, traits, things that people do that bother you oftentimes are parts of you that you judge yourself for. I'm curious, like, as you go through your days, where do you find yourself judging people the most? And have you thought about, and would you be ready to speak to, like, does that call out parts of you that you've not either accepted or that you judge for yourself, or at least are not
Yeah,
compassionate towards yourself with?
I'd say that's tough. There's maybe a couple. Um, one thing that I can't stand, and I don't know if it's so much. Yeah, I guess I am judging it, and maybe it is like when I hear people just like, especially at like the coffee shop, gossiping, complaining, just having it, just going off on someone else that's not even there. I'm just like, I'm so I want to say something to him so bad, and I don't. And I don't know if that's so much. And maybe there's a part of me that obviously I'm not immune from ever speaking about other people. So maybe it comes from that. But something about that, I just really grinds my gears. I'm just like, this is how we're going to spend our energy, just by, you know, venting about how bad of a person someone is. And if I know if they want to treat me, I'll treat them, like, just like I'll get them more, that type of thing, like revenge and all that. It just, so that bothered. I would say the other part is just around like, which is really hard for me, but I think there's like still internalized homophobia in some ways for myself. So like, especially with like maybe men that are more feminine, I kind of find myself still judging them in some ways, and I'm not even really sure what the judgment is. It's just like, whoa. And maybe that's because I haven't accepted, there's a part of me somewhere that I haven't accepted within myself. And so I project that onto, others. So I would say, those are kind of the two things that come to mind. I would say maybe the other is sometimes I find myself judging, if I see someone on social media that just, it feels like they're just, only posting their wins, or only posting like the highlights. And it's like, look at me, look at all this and this and this. And I'm just like, it almost like a little jealousy in some ways. And also I think I'm like, maybe I haven't let myself be fully proud of what I've accomplished. And, I feel like I'm bragging if I ever, post about the stuff that I'm doing. So I think I'm wrestling kind of with that dynamic as well, is like, how can I post in a way that provides social proof of what I'm able to do for people or organizations, whatever it might be, but that doesn't feel like I'm bragging, because at the end of the day, I don't feel like I'm doing any of this, like I feel like God's given me a gift and I just use it hopefully for good. And It is nothing it's not my doing. So I'm not here to like, it's me, I'm the one, but how do you balance that with building social proof and credibility and like, hey, here's what I've been able to do. So those are some of the things I'm wrestling with. It's a really, I mean, talk about, you want to really like learn about yourself. I think that's a great question to ask yourself if you're listening, is like, where do you find yourself judging others the most, or what do you dislike the most in others when they do it? Because there's a good chance that there's a part of you that is still judging yourself in the same way. It's like, I feel like a lot of people don't like when others take up too much space, or are overly quote unquote positive, or overly quote unquote joyful, or beat to their own drum, and it's annoying. And it's like, that's just because you haven't allowed yourself to do that, and you feel anger or whatever it might be, because you want that deep down, but you haven't allowed yourself to do it. And so you project that onto other people. So I think that's a pretty common one. I don't say I really get that, because I do live pretty freely, but some of those other ones for sure.
Yeah, when I when I first learned that part, I didn't really understand it. I was like, what? Why would me judging somebody be of something that I either wish I had, or, is a part of me that I haven't accepted yet, or, I have not been real with myself about. But having known you for as long as I have, and having known so much about you for having done these podcasts and having had these conversations, it's interesting to hear you say things that I think really check out. Like, it's none of what you said is surprising. So I
What
just
would your
wonder
answer
how
be?
much, like, my answer.
Yeah, I
I
think that's a
know
good,
I
like,
was towards the end. I stopped paying attention because I was starting to think of like I was like, this guy's
great.
this MFer is gonna flip this on me. um, I think the silliness piece of it, um, if there was one where it's like a projection of me wishing I was more of something, I think sometimes when people are overly playful or silly or just like out there, um, but I think I've also become very aware. I've become hyper aware of this, so I quickly transitioned from judgment back to like self-awareness, that like it almost like pricks me. It's like, hey man, reminder, this is a part of you that, you wish you could work more on, or hey man, reminder, this is a part of you that you haven't accepted, or, that you're judging other people with. So I think I quickly move off the judgment piece, but the parts that still come up where I judge I think when somebody is like that. Another one that came up with, which was interesting, is like a sense of like disgust for when people are like indulging or enjoying food, or just like eating, or just gluttony. um like, and I think that that's a true one. That one cuts deep, because I think I've struggled with gluttony. I've struggled with binge eating. I've struggled with like uh, a really bad relationship with food. And I think like seeing a glutton, seeing somebody who's like overindulging and like really enjoying themselves, uh, I think on the surface, I hold a lot of judgment. I'm like, I probably show my disgust, or I like voice my disgust for that. But there are behind the scenes moments in my life where like, that's me, and I know the pleasure that comes with what that person's going through, like, so that's one where I'm like, ooh, like that's that's a really guilty pleasure. Like that's one that I have to like, um, now I'm in a point in my life where, having dropped a ton of weight, having like gotten really back on track with a healthier relationship with food, um, I've gotten into, I think, a stage of my life where I'm more at peace with that part of me. But not too long ago, there was a part of me that was just like, yeah, I was, more times than not, I was indulging. And then it's interesting. Like then when I would see it, it would be a more potent response of judgment.
Yep. Yep.
Those are
I
the two
feel
that
it.
came to mind. And then the latter one being like a newer one I've never really thought about or spoken about.
Let me ask you this to wrap it up. My second question for you, and maybe the answer is the same as the first. I don't know. How would you change the way you live day to day and bigger picture if you knew you wouldn't be judged?
Oh man. What I'm struggling with is trying to understand or trying to think about where judgment of others actually has an impact or plays a role on. So what I'm struggling with is like, how would I change my life? And there's a response I have for like how I think I might want to change my life, which is quite radical. It's a big shift. I don't know. What I then struggle with though is like, am I truly held back by the judgment of others in this regard? Which would complete the answer to your question, or am I holding myself back out of fear? Is it the
Uh,
fear of judgment?
I
And
was
like that's
just
the
gonna
part
say
I
that. It's
right. But
really
so
like the question is really. It's normally the judgment we feel towards ourselves that we.
yeah, so I'll tell you something, right? Like with so much momentum in my career, my heart's not in corporate America, and I don't know that anybody's is, right? But it's one of those things where it's like I've started this ascend, I've started this climb, and I'm climbing successfully. And there's just a part of me that's like, if I pivot now, you know, I have something really good happening right now. Really good. And it keeps getting better. And there's more light in the tunnel, not even at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm in the light. Like I am operating on all cylinders right now. I'm at like the peak of my career right now, or peak of like this stage of my career, let's say, right? Like there's so much momentum. There's so much ambition. There's so much optimism around me in terms of like what I'm doing right now. And at the same time, there's this internal tug of like, I don't give a shit about any of it. Truly, like the fulfillment's not, it's not fulfilling. If anything, I'm getting my fulfillment outside of it, right? I'm learning how to live my life outside of work, and that's where I'm getting my fulfillment from. And I do wonder about that lifestyle of like, do I just leave it all? And do I go somewhere, and tend to a farm, and like, do I take the 2-year hiatus with my cousin in Australia and learn how to, farm honeybees, like, do I just go and radically change my life and get my hands dirty and do like hard physical labor in sunlight and like eat from the earth, and there's just like this lifestyle that I think is out there that I would truly embrace, and it would come with its own set of challenges. But I think the biggest challenge is this, maybe it's a scarcity mentality. Maybe it's a like, don't stop something while you're ahead. Like, I never, and I always coach people on this, but I'm like, when you're in your career, don't cut momentum. If you have momentum, keep it up. And it would feel like I'm walking away from something, leaving something that right now is just serving me so well. And there's a fear of regret of doing that. And then, yes, I think
So
people
then I
would be
question the question
bewildered by
is.
that decision.
I think the
People would be
question
like, what the hell
is.
are you doing, Mike?
Well, I think the question is, what fear is bigger, the fear of regret of leaving it, or the fear of what comes if you never leave, in the
Well,
regret?
so the fear of leaving it is stronger right now because in my mind, it's kind of like, I'll do it later. And that gives me comfort, is this idea that like, if things start to stall in my career, if I have a setback, if the pain really truly becomes painful, because I don't think it's like that painful, but I am always wondering, like, there's somebody on the other side of the world right now living a totally different life. I lived this thing one time. Should I go and live multiple lives? And there's a part of me that's like an abundance mentality of like, I've done this thing. I've taken I've run this race before. I've done the corporate thing. I've done the like capitalist America thing, building wealth, I'm like building security and doing those things. And like, these can be vehicles to building a family in that greater image. but I would become fearful if I felt that time had started to pass me by and that there was still this other lifestyle and this life that I wouldn't have explored. And will I get to a rocking chair at 85 and regret that? Yeah, probably, maybe. So
Sounds like
yeah,
that sounds like
yeah.
a question for you to further wrestle with, and for our audience to be like, again, maybe ask yourself that question. How would you change the way you live day to day and bigger picture if you knew you wouldn't be judged? And like you said, I think, but for a lot of people, I do think the judgment of others the opinion of others gets in the way of their ability to
Well,
live the life.
eh,
But I think what I'm saying for you, for the most part, and for myself, I think it's more for me. It's the judgment of myself in addition to the judgment of others. Like the judgment
don't
of
get me
myself is
wrong.
holding me
Yeah,
back.
there's still there is still that, like, I would have to explain that to people, and I would be judged, you know, left and right. I would think, starting with my parents, they'd be like, "Are you out of your mind?" Like, that would be hard to even just explain to somebody. So yeah, I mean, that's certainly a part of it. I would say that's not the part that's leading the pullback. And in my ideal, I can just hit like a 2-year sabbatical. Like, just give me a year or two of just like, let's pause. Can we hit the pause button on this life? I want to go start up and see another life. And then I want to come back if I want to, or I'll come back if I want to. And I won't even do that. To me, like, a sabbatical, of pausing is too much severing of momentum, especially in my profession. Like, that there is legitimate momentum in my profession. So yeah, it's a struggle in some ways.
It's life's a struggle, man. We'll leave it with that, everyone. So you've got a couple of questions. Think about the questions we asked ourselves and ask yourself those questions and just see what arises. And do it, of course, most importantly, with honesty and non-attachment to the best of your ability. Thank you all, of course, for being here, for supporting us. Again, hit that follow button, that subscribe button, and share it with your friends, family, colleagues, whoever you think might benefit. Thank you.